purity, animals that do not have circulating blood in them, such as flies, ants, bees, and so on, that the Messenger of Allah said, if a fly falls into a bowl of yours, then immerse it into it completely, and then throw it out, for in one of its wings is a disease, and in the other is the antidote. Okay. Bones, horns, nails, hairs, and feathers of dead animals are all pure. Based on the basic ruling of purity, unless there is proof otherwise, Bukhari recorded without a complete chain that Az-Zuhri said about the bones of dead animals, such as an elephant and others, I have met some of the earlier scholars who used to use those for combing or applying oil, and they did not see any harm in that. Hamad said, there is no harm concerning the feathers of the dead animals, how to clean impurities. The lawgiver who has informed us of the impure items has also informed us of the manner by which they are to be purified. Thus, it is obligatory upon us to follow what he has stated and fulfill his commands. Therefore, if it is narrated that something should be washed until the color, till the smell or taste of the impurity no longer persists, this is how it must be purified. If it is narrated that something is supposed to have water poured over it, sprinkled with water, scrubbed, wiped over the earth to be made pure, or that by simply walking over the ground it is made pure, then such is how it is to be purified. One should also realize that water is the basic agent to be used for purifying impurities, as the lawgiver has described it by saying, Allah has created water purifying. When the purifying agent is confirmed by the lawgiver, then no other choice should be made. If one does so, then he is going from what is known to purify the object to something concerning which it is not known if it will purify object. This is going against what is the sanctioned way. Based on this point, below are presented by the sanctioned ways of purifying specific impure objects or objects made impure. Purifying of animal skin by tanning it. That the Prophet said, any pelt that is tainted has been made pure. Purifying the bowl in which a dog has licked. Narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, the purifying of one of your bowls that a dog licked in is for it to be washed 7 times, the first time being with dirt, purifying the garment which has had menstrual blood on it. Stated that a woman came to the Prophet and said, we get menstrual blood on our clothing, so what should we do? He replied, rub it, then scratch it off with water, and then wet it, and then you can pray in it. There is no harm if some traces of the blood are left after that. O Messenger of Allah, I only own one garment, and I wear it while menstruating. What should I do? He replied, when you became pure from your menses, wash the place of the blood and then pray in it. She then said, even if its traces are not removed? He replied, the water is sufficient for you, and its traces will not harm you. Purifying the bottom of the woman's dress. An ex-slave of Ibrahim, the wife of the Prophet, I am a woman who lets her dress drag, and I walk in filthy places. So what should I do? Said the Prophet, replied, what comes after it purifies it, purifying the garment upon which a nursing baby boy has urinated. The servant of the Prophet narrated that the Prophet said the urine of the baby girl is to be washed, while that of the baby boy to be sprinkled over, purifying the garment from al-Mahdi. I used to suffer a lot from having Mahdi and used to wash a lot due to it. I mentioned that to the Messenger of Allah, and he said, it is sufficient for you to make ablution from that. I said, what should I do about that what falls upon my clothing? He replied, it is sufficient for you to take a handful of water and wet your clothing wherever you see any place on which it has fallen. Purification of the bottom of sandals. That the Prophet said, when one of you comes to the mosque, he should turn his sandals over and look at them. If he finds any filth on them, he should wipe them on the ground and then pray in them. Purification of the ground and earth. Narrated that a Bedouin started to urinate in the mosque. The people tried to get to him, and the Prophet said to them, leave him and pour over his urine a large bowl of container of water. Certainly you have been sent to make things easy, and you have not been sent to make things difficult. The Prophet ordered that to be done immediately in order to purify the grounds. If he had left it until it become dry and its remains disappeared, the place would be considered pure. This conclusion is based on the hadith of Ibn Umar, who said dogs used to urinate and pass through the mosque during the lifetime of the Prophet, and they would not pour water over it. Sunnah al-Fitr, the natural practices. That the Messenger of Allah said 5 are from the natural practices: circumcision, shaving the pubic hairs, plucking the armpit hairs, clipping the nails, and trimming the moustache. On the authority of who said that the Messenger of Allah said 10 are from the natural practices: trimming the moustache, leaving the beard to grow, using the toothstick, cleaning by putting water in the nose, clipping the nails, washing the knuckles and finger joints, plucking the underarm hairs, shaving the pubic hairs, using water to clean the private part after urinating. I have forgotten the 10th, unless it is rinsing one's mouth. Circumcision. Circumcision is obligatory with respect to both men and women, as it is from the outward signs of Islam. The Prophet said to a man who embraced Islam, cut off the hairs of the time of unbelief. Cut off the hairs of the time of unbelief and get circumcised. It is from the way of the Prophet Abraham. That the Prophet said, Abraham was circumcised after he had become 80 years old. Allah said to his Prophet Muhammad, then we have inspired you, Muhammad, follow the religion of Abraham, the pure monotheist. It is recommended that the circumcision take place on the 7th day after the birth. That the Prophet had the kikah, and he had them circumcised on the 7th day after their birth. 7th are sunnah acts for the 7th day of a child's life, naming the child's circumcision. Although each of these hadith have some weakness to it, they strengthen each other since they come from different sources and contain known narrators who are suspect and respect to their integrity. Leaving the beard to grow. Leaving the beard to grow is obligatory. Shaving it is forbidden, as it is changing the creation of Allah, which is an action of Satan, as Allah has said. Satan has said, indeed, I will order them to change the nature created by Allah by shaving the beard. One is impersonating woman, while the messenger of Allah cursed the men who impersonate woman. The Prophet has ordered the beard to left to grow. His order implies obligation, as is well known. Abu Hurairah narrated that the Messenger of Allah said, cut the moustache and leave the beard, being different from the Magians. That the Prophet said, differ from the polytheists, leave the beard to grow and trim the moustache. The tusik. The use of the tusik is a recommended act in general, but in certain circumstances it is given even greater emphasis and preference. These are when making ablution. That the Prophet said, if it were not to be a hardship on my nation, I would order them to use the tusik when making ablution. At the time of the prayer, Abu Hurairah narrated that the Prophet said, if it were not to be a hardship on my nation, I would order them to use tusik at every prayer. Upon reciting the Quran, Ali said, we were ordered to use the tusik. He also said, when the human stands to pray, an angel comes to him and stands behind him, listening to the Quran and coming closer to him. He continues to listen and come close to him until he put his mouth upon the person's mouth. He does not read a verse except that it goes into the angel. Upon entering the house from his father, who said, I asked her, what did the Prophet do first when he entered his house? She said, use the tusik. Upon getting up at night, Hudayfa said, when the Messenger of Allah would get up to perform the late night prayers, he would clean his teeth with a tusik.